Let us first discuss Pygmalion as a comedy of manners. A comedy of manners is a dramatic genre that satirizes the behavior, customs, values, and social conventions of a particular society, especially the upper classes. Traditionally, such plays focus on social etiquette, fashionable lifestyles, witty conversations, and the hypocrisy hidden beneath polite behavior. Pygmalion contains many of these characteristics. The first important feature is witty dialogue. Shaw is famous for his brilliant conversations. The characters constantly engage in clever verbal exchanges filled with humor, irony, and intellectual debate. For example, Higgins' conversations with Eliza, Pickering, and Mrs. Higgins often create comedy through sharp observations and unexpected remarks. The audience enjoys not only what is said but also how it is said. A second feature is social satire. Shaw uses humor to expose the weaknesses and absurdities of society. He mocks class prejudice, social snobbery, and the tendency to judge people by accent and appearance. The audience laughs, but at the same time Shaw encourages them to think critically about social injustice. A third feature is the mockery of manners and social behavior. Throughout the play, Shaw exposes the artificial rules governing upper-class society. For example, Eliza succeeds in social situations largely because people focus on her pronunciation rather than the content of her conversation. Even when she discusses drinking, violence, and family scandals, society accepts her because she sounds refined. This reveals the superficial nature of social etiquette. The fourth feature is the portrayal of upper-class behavior. Many scenes take place among educated and wealthy people. Shaw carefully observes their habits, attitudes, and conversations. However, rather than glorifying them, he often exposes their limitations and pretensions. What makes Shaw unique is his innovation within the genre. Traditional comedies of manners focused mainly on entertainment. Shaw goes much further. He combines comedy with serious social criticism. The audience laughs at the characters, but they are also forced to confront important social questions. This combination of humor and intellectual discussion makes Pygmalion a modern version of the comedy of manners. A problem play is a drama that explores serious social, moral, or political issues through realistic situations and intelligent discussion. Rather than providing simple solutions, it encourages audiences to think critically about important problems. Pygmalion clearly belongs to this tradition. The first social problem discussed is class discrimination. Throughout the play, people are judged according to social background rather than personal worth. Eliza's experience demonstrates how deeply class prejudice influences opportunities and human relationships. Another important issue is women's dependence. Eliza's struggle is not only against poverty but also against social expectations that limit female independence. She fights to gain control over her own life and future. This gives the play a strong feminist dimension. A third problem is identity crisis. As Eliza moves between social classes, she becomes uncertain about who she truly is. She belongs fully neither to her old world nor to her new one. This psychological conflict becomes one of the central concerns of the drama. The play also examines superficial morality. Through characters such as Doolittle, Shaw questions conventional ideas about respectability, virtue, and social success. He exposes the hypocrisy that often exists beneath respectable appearances. The influence of Henrik Ibsen is particularly important here. Shaw greatly admired Ibsen, who revolutionized modern drama by focusing on realistic social issues instead of romantic fantasy. Like Ibsen, Shaw uses theatre as a platform for intellectual discussion. Instead of presenting melodramatic heroes and villains, he presents realistic characters facing complex social problems. This approach is often called discussion drama because ideas become as important as actions. Characters debate issues, challenge assumptions, and force the audience to think. At the same time, Shaw employs realism. The characters speak naturally, the situations feel believable, and the social problems reflect real conditions in contemporary society. Therefore, Pygmalion successfully combines two dramatic traditions. As a comedy of manners, it entertains through wit, satire, and social observation. As a problem play, It explores class discrimination, gender inequality, identity, and social hypocrisy. This combination of humor and serious social analysis is one of the reasons why Pygmalion remains one of the greatest and most influential plays in modern English literature. For examination purposes, remember, comedy of manners equals wit plus satire plus social behavior. Problem play equals social issues plus discussion plus realism. Shaw's achievement equals entertainment plus social reform. Let us begin with social satire. Satire is a literary technique that uses humor, irony, exaggeration, and ridicule to expose weaknesses in society. Shaw was one of the greatest satirists in English literature. He believed that laughter could be a powerful weapon for social reform. Instead of directly preaching to audiences, he encouraged them to laugh at social absurdities and then reflect upon them. The first target of Shaw's satire is class prejudice. Throughout the play, society judges people according to social class rather than character. Eliza is ignored, dismissed, and looked down upon because she is poor and speaks with a Cockney accent. After her speech changes, people suddenly treat her with respect. Nothing essential about her character has changed, yet society's attitude changes completely. Through this contrast, Shaw exposes the irrational nature of class discrimination. The second target is superficial refinement. Many upper-class people believe that elegance, accent, and manners indicate superiority. Shaw demonstrates how shallow this belief can be. At Mrs. Higgins' gathering, Eliza speaks about drinking, violence, and family scandals. Yet because she speaks beautifully, people are impressed rather than shocked. This scene humorously reveals how society often values style over substance. Another target is middle-class morality. Through Alfred Doolittle, Shaw questions conventional ideas about respectability and virtue. Doolittle openly admits his flaws and refuses to pretend that he is morally perfect. Ironically, he often appears more honest than supposedly respectable members of society. When he becomes wealthy, he discovers that middle-class respectability brings restrictions and responsibilities rather than happiness. Through Doolittle, Shaw satirizes the hypocrisy hidden beneath respectable appearances. Shaw also attacks patriarchal dominance. Much of the play examines the relationship between Higgins and Eliza. Higgins assumes he has the right to control Eliza's life because he educated her. He treats her as an experiment and often ignores her feelings. However, Eliza eventually challenges his authority and demands independence. Through this conflict, Shaw criticizes traditional male dominance and supports female autonomy. Finally, Shaw satirizes society's obsession with accent. One of the central ironies of the play is that a person's future depends heavily upon pronunciation. A slight difference in speech can determine opportunities, social acceptance, and respect. Shaw believed this obsession was irrational and unfair. The entire experiment with Eliza demonstrates how absurd it is to judge human worth based on accent alone. Open ending and anti-romanticism. One of the most controversial aspects of Pygmalion is its ending. Many audiences expected Higgins and Eliza to fall in love and marry. This would have been the conventional ending in most romantic dramas. However, Shaw strongly opposed such a conclusion. He repeatedly insisted that Higgins and Eliza should not become a romantic couple. Why did Shaw reject this possibility? The answer lies in Eliza's development throughout the play. The central purpose of Eliza's journey is independence. She gradually frees herself from social limitations, emotional dependence, and male authority. If the play ended with her marrying Higgins, much of this development would be undermined. Instead of becoming an independent individual, she would simply move from one form of dependence to another. Shaw believed such an ending would destroy the deeper meaning of the play. Furthermore, Higgins and Eliza are fundamentally different personalities. Higgins values intellect, science, and independence. Eliza increasingly values respect, emotional understanding, and personal dignity. Although they influence one another, they are not ideally suited for a traditional romantic relationship. For this reason, Shaw leaves the ending unresolved. The audience never receives a definite answer about Eliza's future. She may marry Freddie, she may work independently, She may maintain a friendship with Higgins. The choice remains open. This open ending is important because it reflects modern realism. Real life does not always provide simple and perfect conclusions. Human relationships are often complicated and uncertain. Shaw wanted audiences to think about possibilities rather than accept a convenient fairy tale resolution. Therefore, the ending remains both realistic and intellectually open. It encourages discussion long after the play has ended. To conclude, Pygmalion is far more than a romantic comedy. Through social satire, Shaw attacks class prejudice, superficial values, middle-class morality, patriarchal authority, and society's obsession with accent. Through his anti-romantic ending, he protects Eliza's independence and creates a modern drama that values personal growth over conventional romance. Let us begin with the stage and film history of Pygmalion. Pygmalion was first produced on stage in 1913, shortly after Shaw completed the play. The production attracted immediate attention because of its originality, humor, and social criticism. Audiences were fascinated by the story of a poor flower girl transformed into a sophisticated lady through language training. However, the play also generated controversy. One reason was Shaw's realistic use of language. In Act 3, Eliza uses the word bloody in the expression, not bloody likely. Today this phrase may seem ordinary, but in the early 20th century it was considered shocking and vulgar. Many audience members were surprised to hear such language spoken on a respectable stage. The controversy actually increased public interest in the play. It demonstrated Shaw's commitment to realism and his refusal to follow conventional standards of polite theatre. The success of Pygmalion led to numerous adaptations in different forms. The most famous adaptation is the musical My Fair Lady. This adaptation became enormously popular and introduced the story to a global audience. The musical contains memorable songs, elaborate costumes, and a more romantic atmosphere than Shaw's original play. This difference is important. Shaw's version emphasizes social criticism, independence, and intellectual debate. Many later adaptations place greater emphasis on romance and emotional reconciliation. As a result, they sometimes soften Shaw's original message. One of Shaw's major concerns was that audiences might misunderstand Eliza's development and view the story simply as a love story. For this reason, he repeatedly explained that the central issue of the play was independence rather than romance. Now let us examine some of the most important quotations. The first quotation is, "The difference between a lady and a flower girl is not how she behaves, but how she's treated." This statement is one of the central messages of the entire play. Eliza speaks these words when discussing the influence of Colonel Pickering. The quotation suggests that identity is shaped not only by personal qualities but also by the way society treats individuals. When people are treated with respect, they often develop confidence and self-respect. When they are treated with contempt, their opportunities become limited. Thus, the quotation emphasizes the power of dignity, kindness, and human respect. The second important quotation is, "I sold flowers. I didn't sell myself." This statement occurs during Eliza's confrontation with Higgins. It is one of the strongest expressions of her self-respect. Eliza reminds Higgins that although she was poor, she always maintained her dignity. The quotation highlights themes of female independence, morality, and personal integrity. It also demonstrates her refusal to become dependent on others merely for financial security. From a feminist perspective, this is one of the most significant statements in the play. The third quotation is, "I can pass that girl off as a duchess." This statement is made by Higgins in Act 1. It introduces the central experiment of the drama. The quotation reflects Higgins' belief that language determines social identity. According to him, proper pronunciation can transform the way society perceives an individual. The entire plot develops from this claim. The quotation therefore represents the themes of language, class, education, and social mobility. Finally, we have the quotation, "This is an age of upstarts." This statement reflects the changing social conditions of the Edwardian period. Traditional class barriers were becoming weaker. People from humble backgrounds could improve their social position through education, wealth, and professional success. The quotation highlights the theme of social mobility and the transformation of modern society. It reminds us that Pygmalion is not only about individual characters but also about broader social change. Therefore, this slide connects the historical influence of Pygmalion with its most memorable ideas. The play achieved great success on stage, inspired famous adaptations, and challenged audiences through its realism and social criticism. Its quotations continue to be studied because they summarize Shaw's most important concerns: respect, dignity, language, identity, and social change. For examination purposes, remember these quotation themes: the difference between a lady and a flower girl. Right pointing arrow, respect shapes identity. I sold flowers. I didn't sell myself. Right pointing arrow, female dignity and self-respect. I can pass that girl off as a duchess. Right pointing arrow, language determines social identity. This is an age of upstarts. Right pointing arrow, social mobility and changing class structures. Together, these quotations provide a concise summary of the major ideas that make Pygmalion one of the greatest modern plays in English literature. This slide presents the views of some important literary critics on George Bernard Shaw and Pygmalion. These critical opinions are valuable because they help us understand how scholars and literary historians have evaluated Shaw's achievement as a dramatist. Let us begin with T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot, one of the most influential literary critics and poets of the 20th century, admired Shaw's remarkable skill in writing dialogue. According to Eliot, one of Shaw's greatest strengths was his ability to create lively, intelligent, and engaging conversations. In Pygmalion, much of the action develops through dialogue rather than physical events. Characters debate ideas, challenge one another, and reveal their personalities through speech. Whether it is the verbal conflict between Higgins and Eliza, the philosophical speeches of Doolittle, or the balanced observations of Mrs. Higgins, the dialogue remains energetic and memorable. Eliot recognized that Shaw transformed conversation itself into an art form. As a result, Pygmalion remains enjoyable not only because of its story but also because of the brilliance of its language. Next, we have G.K. Chesterton. Chesterton described Shaw as a master conversationalist. This assessment highlights Shaw's extraordinary ability to make intellectual discussion entertaining. Many dramatists present ideas through lectures or moral preaching. Shaw does something different. He turns discussion into drama. His characters do not simply talk. They argue, question, challenge, and provoke one another. Even serious topics such as class inequality, language, education, and gender relations become engaging because they are presented through witty and dynamic conversations. Chesterton believed that Shaw possessed a unique gift for transforming debate into compelling theatre. This quality is visible throughout Pygmalion, where intellectual discussion becomes one of the main sources of dramatic interest. The third critic is A.C. Ward. Ward considered Pygmalion to be Shaw's finest comedy. This is a significant judgment because Shaw wrote many successful plays. According to Ward, Pygmalion achieves an ideal balance between entertainment and social criticism. The play contains humor, satire, memorable characters, and witty dialogue. At the same time, it addresses serious social issues such as class prejudice, women's independence, language discrimination, and social mobility. Many comedies focus only on laughter, while many social dramas become overly serious. Pygmalion successfully combines both elements. It entertains audiences while also encouraging them to think critically about society. This balance is one reason why many scholars regard it as Shaw's masterpiece. When we consider these critical opinions together, a clear picture emerges. Eliot praises Shaw's brilliant dialogue. Chesterton praises his mastery of conversation and intellectual debate. Ward praises his ability to combine comedy with social criticism. All three critics recognize Shaw's extraordinary skill in transforming serious ideas into engaging drama. Therefore, Pygmalion is admired not only for its story of Eliza Doolittle's transformation but also for its artistic craftsmanship, intellectual depth, and enduring social relevance. For examination purposes, remember these critical opinions. T.S. Eliot right-pointing arrow praised Shaw's brilliant and lively dialogue. G.K. Chesterton right-pointing arrow called Shaw a master conversationalist. A.C. Ward right-pointing arrow considered Pygmalion Shaw's finest comedy. Together, these opinions highlight the qualities that have made Pygmalion one of the most celebrated works in modern English drama. Slide 56. Conclusion. The lasting significance of Pygmalion, 3 to 4 minute script. As we reach the conclusion of our study of Pygmalion, it becomes clear that this play is much more than a simple story about a flower girl learning proper English. On the surface, the play appears to be the story of Eliza Doolittle's transformation from a poor flower seller into a sophisticated lady. However, beneath this entertaining plot lies a powerful examination of society, human identity, and social injustice. George Bernard Shaw uses Eliza's journey to challenge many of the assumptions that governed Edwardian society. One of the most important lessons of the play is that identity is socially constructed. Society often decides who people are based on external factors such as accent, clothing, manners, and social background. Through Eliza's transformation, Shaw demonstrates how easily these judgments can be manipulated and how unreliable they often are. The play also teaches us that language is power. Throughout the drama, language determines opportunities, respect, and social acceptance. A change in speech allows Eliza to cross social boundaries that once seemed impossible to overcome. Yet Shaw also reminds us that language alone cannot define a person completely. Another central message is that dignity matters more than birth. Although Eliza comes from a poor background, she possesses self-respect, determination, and moral strength. By the end of the play, these qualities prove more valuable than aristocratic status or inherited privilege. Shaw therefore challenges the belief that social rank determines human worth. The play further demonstrates that education can transform life. Education provides Eliza with new opportunities, greater confidence, and increased independence. However, Shaw presents education realistically. It brings growth and empowerment, but it also creates challenges, responsibilities, and questions about identity. Perhaps the most important lesson of all is that respect creates self-worth. Eliza herself explains that the difference between a lady and a flower girl lies not in behavior but in treatment. When people are treated with dignity and respect, they develop confidence and self-belief. This idea forms the emotional and moral center of the entire play. For these reasons, Pygmalion remains one of the finest examples of modern realistic drama. It successfully combines comedy, social criticism, realism, feminism, intellectual debate, and psychological insight. The play entertains audiences with its wit and humor while simultaneously encouraging them to question social prejudice, class discrimination, and traditional assumptions about gender and identity. More than a century after its publication, Pygmalion continues to be studied, performed, and admired around the world because its themes remain relevant to modern society. For students of literature and competitive examinations, the play is especially important because it explores a wide range of critical concepts, including realism, satire, feminism, language studies, social mobility, and modern drama. In conclusion, Pygmalion is not simply the story of Eliza Doolittle's transformation. It is Shaw's powerful argument that human worth should be measured not by birth, wealth, accent, or appearance, but by character, dignity, education, and self-respect. Through this timeless message, Pygmalion secures its place as one of the greatest masterpieces of modern English literature. Please like, share, and subscribe for more videos on English literature.